All right, so we're a week into this coaching search, and A&M takes care of business against ACU 38-10. Welcome into the Loochador Podcast, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, who is your college football tailgate destination and offer official sports good and outdoor retailer of the SEC. Stop by your local Academy store or go to academy.com and gear up for game day today. All right, he's Billy Liucci. I'm David Nuño. Let's get into the game, and obviously we got to talk about the coaching search. But I wanted to start it off with this. A&M scores 30 against South Carolina, 38 against Ole Miss, 51 against Mississippi State, and 38 against ACU. 34.5 season average. There was a 2-week stretch where this offense was not, and a little bit longer, not providing a lot of offense. I don't care about the opponent at the moment. I'm just saying the offense is doing some good things.
Well, yeah, you're not sitting here bragging about that offensive performance against ACU, which was fine. You know, it was slow. It was slow starting, finished fine, but it wasn't. That wasn't just up and down the field and press you style offense. They had 3 sacks early on, brutal protection issues. Jalen Henderson was smacked around early. Once led to a defensive touchdown. So no, it was the yardage total was nice by game's end. 38 points is I would have expected them to score 52, if not 55, 59 points in a game against a team that they outmatched like that. With that said, I think Abilene Christian did a nice job defensively of just kind of like, you know, basically selling out and saying we're just gonna dial up your QB and try to get tackles for loss and dare you to hit big plays. And A&M hit enough big plays to pull away and score almost 40 points. And look, I think they were also – it was not a game where they went out there. I mean, you're trying to score on every possession, but by no means do I think that was a game where you saw A&M just let it all hang out and go full-blown attack mode, you know, so to speak. It doesn't matter how many points they scored against Abilene Christian this week. It matters what they do Saturday in Baton Rouge. And last year I watched A&M beat, what was the final score against UMass? Was it 24-10,
Something
20
like that,
20-10? It was something. Now the weather played a giant role in how the lack of offense, but it's still
20-3.
That was UMass only had 3. I thought maybe they were about to score 10 at some point there, or maybe it was 17-3 or 13. I think it was 13.
It was 10-3 at the half.
Yeah, I think it was 13-3 at a point
entering the fourth quarter.
So, anyway, this was not like that. I know Abilene, it was 7-7 at the end of the first quarter, and it was only 17-7 at halftime. But it wasn't like had they cut it to 17-10 before A&M pushed it out past 17-3, maybe it becomes something you start looking at. But that stuff never happened. So I thought the Aggies just kind of methodically pulled away. It wasn't stellar performance by any means. Even the A&M defense. Even though they only gave up 1 touchdown, it felt like there were times in that game.
They didn't give up a touchdown.
200. Oh, yeah, it was defensive. 240 yards at not giving up a touchdown. There were times where it felt like Abilene was staying on the field a little bit, mainly in the second half, I thought. But realistically, methodical, workmanlike victory. And the most important thing about this game, in my opinion, is you came out, as far as I could tell, pretty healthy. Number one. Number two, and which is really the biggest thing, Elijah Robinson with his first career win as a head coach, hopefully the first of 3 to start it off for him. But just talking about yesterday, for this guy, by all accounts, you guys, we all saw the press conference, right? We all saw him in the press conference. We all saw him post-game. We saw him with his family. It's easy to see how likable he is. It's easy to see what a real person he is, just genuine, humble, but what you didn't see is how practices went that week, how much fun the team had. Look, I know they weren't a well-oiled machine out there. There were way too many penalties early. If it wouldn't have been Abilene Christian where you knew they were going to win, it would have been a very frustrating start. There would have been a lot of tension and angst there. But I think they were playing hard to try to win a game for him and maybe even pressing a little too much in those games where you think you're just going to go out there and roll. and somebody gets hit and there's a pick six early, and you look up and you're like, damn it, we're tied with this team in the second. So that stuff takes a while, I think, to shake, and I think they shook it. But more than anything, Elijah, the practice week they had, the things I heard about how they were practicing, the fun they were having, but then also, the uniforms, the all 12th man kickoff team, which was incredible. That was such a fun moment to watch. The players get to pick what they wore this week. These type things have been missing. And I don't think it's necessary. People will turn into a knock on Jimbo, and I guess it is because those are decisions. But I just think the guy was so caught up in the job every single day. And I know people think, no, $75 million, he got paid to leave. He didn't. No, it was actually the opposite, to where I think it was just tunnel vision and these little things like you saw yesterday, and the guys running around having fun at practice, cutting some practices short on the tail end because their legs are shot at this point of the year, and just giving the guys a break. These type things are not, I just think coaches, sometimes I've seen it happen. I saw it, I believe, with Jimbo. They get so caught up in their way, and their way works, and other people just kind of stop raising their hand and saying, hey, why don't we, no. And then you're going to stop asking me. Well, I would like to ask Billy this, but every time I do, he just kind of dismissive, and it's just...
It's human nature, yeah.
It's a waste of time, or in some... And I'm not saying this was the case with Jimbo, but other leaders, they start getting pissed. Like, no one else is asking questions, and here you are every week. You're starting to annoy me. That's how people... That's, like you said, it's human nature in some instances, but... So sometimes just change helps, and I think change in the form of... And I don't think that's Elijah trying to disrespect anything or anything. I just think he and the staff, and it's probably not all him, but they're sitting back just watching. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point he said, what do any of you guys have ideas? What can we do? I don't know if all those were him. They might have been. But maybe somebody raised their hand and said, what about uniforms? Or what about more music at practice? Or what about, I don't know who came up with, did they talk about whose idea that was?
I didn't hear that, yeah.
But
great idea.
Those type things, you now have an open discourse where that can go on without it being kind of perceived as a distraction of the game plan and the preparation for the upcoming opponent. So I thought it worked. We'll find out Saturday, what they really have to work with here. Because now I'm thrown into this area where, like, there were things Jalen Henderson did Saturday that really impressed me, and then there were other times where he looked like a guy that was starting a second game of his college. That he looked, and Abilene Christian was throwing a lot at him. And I'll be honest, they're going to throw more defensive looks and exotic stuff at him than LSU will. It's just the way it goes. And you can ask me why, and we always talk about this, like why don't the better teams do it and do the same thing, but with more talent?
Sometimes.
They don't feel like they have to.
Right.
They feel like they can sit more base and not expose themselves. So,
which is why I think A&M offensively wasn't showing ACU a bunch of new stuff either.
Yeah, I think that certainly had. I would hope that Bobby Petrino and this offense have a lot of wrinkles for LSU that they haven't revealed, and that they didn't want to reveal on Saturday. It's not like that's a season opener, but in some ways it kind of is. It kind of is for this particular team, on offense anyway.
Right.
And there's an opportunity there to do some things that you haven't shown most of the year against a bad LSU defense. But the problem is they are as elite gets offensively. They are damn near historic. They might have a guy win a Heisman. A couple guys out west will have a say in it over a 3-loss LSU team. But as far as who the best player in college football has been this year, I think it's Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I do too.
He's been that good. And did you say he's him?
No, I said.
I thought you.
No.
I
think he is.
He is,
yeah.
But I thought you just said
he is him. No, I don't talk like that.
I don't even know if people.
Nick, did I say that?
Because
if I did, fire me.
Or was that like last year?
That was last year.
I don't know if Nick can fire you.
Oh yeah,
he could recommend it. You can fire him.
Okay, Nick, you're staying around for a little bit.
Fire him if he brings up that you said he is him again.
Then he's out. Richard Zane out. Sorry.
Jaden Daniels is in. Jaden Daniels is in New York.
I think I would vote for him if I had a vote.
I would too, because I think it's for the most outstanding player in college football. And
he's him.
He really is, though.
Wasn't that the XFL back in 2005? Is that the first guy who said he is him? I am him? Didn't the guy have that in the back of his jersey, the very first XFL game?
You might be right.
I think I'm right. It's a long time ago.
No, there was a different name. Look up the XFL. It was a different. It was not I am him. He hate me.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So
I was
close.
Completely wrong.
Close, but not even close.
Anyway, he hate me. Yeah,
literally not one word the same.
Yeah, it's not the same at all.
He hate me.
I like you though.
So yeah, thank you. I like
Appreciate
you too.
that.
So anyway, LSU this weekend's going to be. A&M will have to look. That team that played yesterday, just kind of the up and down nature of the offense. It was the slow start, up and down nature of the offense and defense. Not really. They didn't. I mean, it's a good defensive performance, but there was enough there. You go, man, they're lucky they're not playing LSU today. I worry about matchups on the outside against LSU, those receivers versus that secondary. I worry about, obviously, the Aggies have done such a good job of getting to the quarterback. Jaden Daniels does such a good job of eluding the rush, and when he does, more so than any quarterback they've faced this year, he'll kill you as a runner. There's a revenge element on LSU's side. Other than that, they don't have a lot to play for, but they're going to be playing for payback of A&M. They're going to be paying to win their quarterback. They're playing to win their quarterback a Heisman. This is the toughest. It's not. I think it's as tough a test as A&M will have faced this year, even more so than Bama on the road at Tennessee, because of the quarterback on the other side, because of the matchup with those receivers versus the A&M DBs, and because it's in Death Valley, it's in Baton Rouge, and because you're in the second game of an interim coaching regime. And for as much as I want to see A&M win, it is going to be a tall task. If Elijah Robinson's to go in there with this team and pull it off with their limitations against LSU's strengths, Bobby Petrino is going to have to put on a master class to get Jalen Henderson and this offense to trade punches, not at the beginning, not over the middle course of the game, not late in trying to come back, but over 4 quarters against this LSU offense. So Jalen Henderson does not have to outperform Jaden Daniels in terms of yards and but you're saying Bobby Petrino has to put an offense together where a third game as a starter, not expected to play at all this year, and Jalen Henderson is going to have to walk off the field a winner over Jaden Daniels and kind of spoil his Heisman Trophy campaign in Baton Rouge. So that is going to be, it's going to be as tall a task as this team's faced this year. But what a story it would be. Could you imagine?
I can imagine.
Jalen over Jaden, and Jalen Henderson, and the A&M running game supports him, and the receivers make plays like Moose and Noah were making yesterday, and it just kind of snowballs. They're going to have to run the ball a lot and run it really well, but you never know. Here's what I'll say. LSU has... I think this A&M defense is as good as any that LSU's faced this year, save, I don't know, Florida State's defense is really good, Bama's is really good, but A&M's is right up there with them. I do get concerned at those receivers against what at times has been a depleted A&M secondary, an A&M cornerback position that lacks size. I worry about those matchups, but just as far as if you just said, here are the defenses ranked that we play this year, A&M's in the top 3, and they might be a co-number 1 along with those. So the LSU, their point total and what they do week after week and what they're used to doing, it should be one of these instances where they have to fight and earn those yards and points more so than they do in the past. That's what should happen. Funny things happen in Baton Rouge, especially when they're trying to coronate a Heisman Trophy winner. We saw that. But it should be that way, David. They should have to work harder for their points, and A&M's offense should look better than it, and like you said, they've been moving and scoring points. That Saturday opened my eyes a little bit. I'd be lying if I sat here and said I would have loved to have seen them score 52, 55 points and roll from the beginning and go, okay, you had Mississippi State, now this, and then, prior to Max getting hurt, you had Ole Miss and even South Carolina in the final three quarters. But this one, to me, didn't fit that roll into Baton Rouge with a ton of momentum thing, but it also doesn't mean that you can't pick that right back up. Right. It really doesn't. We saw it last year. So I think nothing has changed on this front. If I'm Petrino and I'm A&M, the reason you beat LSU and Jaden Daniels last year, there was one reason. I'll see if you can guess it. You can't.
Because you have a unique thought when it comes to this. So the pressure that they put on Jaden Daniels limited him?
No, I thought you were going to say, A-Chain is really the reason. But physicality.
Yeah.
They lined up and they ran the ball and they played physical defense with Jaden Daniels, with stopping that LSU running game. You can't let LSU run the ball on you, and they've got good backs. They've got a really good lead back. You can't let them run the ball on you and set things up where you at least have to feel like the pass is coming. You can't let them get in a run, pass, pass first down, running on 3rd and 5. You can't let them get in this rhythm where you have no clue what's coming. They have to be physical enough to win the line of scrimmage and stop the run. You have to be physical with Jaden Daniels. Look, he begs himself to get pummeled on a football field. He runs around and he does not care. And I respect the hell out of him for it, but you have to take advantage of those opportunities, and you have to hit him and hit him hard. You have to sack him, make him kind of take that step and not quite know if he wants to take off and run or what to do. You got to put him in that in-between land. And then offensively, A&M is not going to, you can't go 3 and out against this team. It's like Johnny and A&M in 2012. You do that and you might be down big in a hurry, or the game can turn immediately. So the offense is going to have to be physical and run the football like they did here a year ago.
I'm looking at, would Alabama be the closest, I guess Florida State, the closest defense to A&M that they
faced?
both
those are on a comparable level. They're better in some areas. A&M's better in some areas.
So in that game, in the Alabama game, he rushed for 163 yards, threw for 219 with his 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, but they only scored 28 points.
That's what I care about. How many points did they score?
Yeah, 28 points in that game.
And how many did they score against LSU?
Against LSU, they scored Florida State 24.
24, yeah. So I'm not saying A&M's got to hold them in there. That would be optimal, I think.
Keep them to 31 points. Can you win that game?
Yeah. I mean, can you win 35-31? Can you win, 38-34? And one of those type games, that to me, if you can win one 31-28, I mean, that's kind of in that formula. LSU's going to score, but make them earn it. That's kind of the mindset.
Yeah. I just want a couple other things about the game, then we'll get to Coach. Reuben Owens, 100-yard game. Good to see him going. And then the 12th-man kickoff team. I know we kind of touched on it earlier, but just cool to see, especially we had Jackie in studio talking about it on Friday, and then to see it, honored during the game, and then they did it during the game as a team. I thought that was awesome to see.
By the way, when you look at these, when you look at the way Abilene Christian played, and LSU won't do this, I thought their quarterback did a nice job.
Yeah.
He got rid of the ball.
Maverick,
yeah.
MacGyver.
He threw it away. But 1 sack for the Aggies. The way they've been this year, 1 sack and only 6 tackles for loss. They did a good job of, I think, keeping A&M off balance. This was, I credit their coaching staff, because while they were never going to win this game, they muddied it up. Yep. They got off to the start they needed to. Took the crowd out of it, a crowd that wasn't going to be. It was to have that many people there for that game at 11 a.m. against that team after this season. Once again, impressive. Yep. But it still was a crowd that was easily taken out of it. They did a good job of that, and the way they called the game, get it out of his hand, don't get your quarterback killed, try to stay ahead of the chains, and they did okay with that. But they hung in. Reuben Owens, when he gets to that second level, he's very dangerous. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see him come out and have a good rushing effort in the season finale in Baton Rouge. Whether it's him, whether it's Le'Veon Moss, you saw out there for, was it 1 or 2 carries?
Couple plays, yeah.
Whether it's him getting back right or Amari Daniels, who Ruben was the guy. Okay, and by the way, first career 100-yard game, they get the right coaching staff in here that runs a exciting, high quality offense that balances run and pass and finds creative ways to open up running lanes where these guys can actually have somewhere to run through other than what we've seen lately. Ruben Owens can be a guy that we forget, like 5-star. He works hard. Kids love him. He's not a diva at all. Like, you're talking about a kid that could be a star next year. Yeah. If they hire a guy that runs the right offense, Ruben Owens, of all the young players, you have to say this kid could be a star. So I'd love to see him follow up this performance with another strong showing at LSU. But I think it might be the 1-2 punch. If you can get a healthy Moss and a confident Owens, that's the start of your path to pulling that upset next week. As far as good to see Marcel Reed throw his first career touchdown pass, good to see Jaden Platt catch his first touchdown pass. Those guys have a lot of young potential on the team. Ja'Day Walker continues to have a nice season. Credit Ja'Day Walker for hanging in and there's a lot of guys with a lot bigger names ahead of him, and yet here he is towards the finish line. Moose, 4 catches, 104 yards, 50-yard touchdown, 49-yard touchdown. He the one-handed catch and the hurdle, and just leaves everyone going, and doing it in sleeves, mind you, and leaves everyone going, what happened this year? What were you doing? And I talked to him this week, and he was, I could tell he was down, and but I told him, I just have a feeling in Baton Rouge, you're one of those guys that LSU fans are going to look back and go, remember that dude from A&M, Moose Muhammad? I freaking hated him.
Right.
And he needed something like this in order to do it. It wasn't going to come out of 1 catch for 7 yards, 2 catches for 21 yards, 2 for 17, 3 for 31. And then all of a sudden, he needed something to build up and ramp up into it, just from a confidence standpoint, and just, I think, getting the touches. So the 4 for 104, I think he has set the table, Nuño, to do some damage next week in Baton Rouge. And don't forget, it wasn't just last year. He had a big game against LSU the year before as well. So, and Noah Thomas with a TD. Evan Stewart with 1 catch. Anias wasn't used that much. I didn't like that. I wanted to see him senior day keep rolling, but the game goes like the game goes, and maybe he's saving up for next week as well.
Hopefully so. Timeline-wise with Coach, do you still think that they are on track to try to still get it done by December the 4th?
Yeah, I do. I don't. This is the lightest stat sheet I've ever gotten. I don't think. I don't want to put that hard date there.
Sure.
Because God knows we've seen this before, and you're hiring a head football coach. But I still feel confident that they'll get it done. That's the date. I think they'll get it done prior to that. I think they'll get it done days prior to that. So I'm thinking there's only a few day window between LSU and that, but I think on the closer to the LSU game, it wouldn't surprise me at all if A&M took the field in Baton Rouge and
they knew who their coach was.
Athletic director Ross Bjork and those involved in the process knew who their coach was.
Huh.
Yeah, it wouldn't. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but the rate, the kind of the way their plan is, and the timeline that they're feeling, like what they feel like they need to do in terms of that ramp up to that December 4th date. I think they'd love to have someone hired a week from now.
There was a lot of decoding Luch speak on the board because
I haven't read the fallout.
A lot of decoding. But you did a couple things you did say. You said they were going to cast a wide net, and it sounds like they've casted a very wide net. I didn't hear his interview, but I read some of the transcripts. Yesterday, Ross on WTAW, the pregame show, mentioned that they were going to go after a sitting head coach, as they did with Joni, as they did with Schloss. So just a couple thoughts on how wide of a cast they have done, and the kind of names, maybe not names in particular, but just we've heard it reported that it's some big-time names have been approached.
I think in a lot of instances, it's big-time names approaching A&M. Mm-hmm. And I think when they started this search, I kind of laugh a little bit because I'm like, what the hell did you expect? It's freaking Texas A&M. And despite what people like Joel Klatt and any random Twitter troll and anybody wants to say, this is a big-time elite job. If you wanted to argue with me that it's not a top 5 job, I wouldn't argue with you because I'm like, okay, what are your parameters? I can give you parameters that are very realistic and reasonable that you'd say it's a top 5 job. And I could factor in the expectation level, which I think is really high considering A&M's lack of history, but I think it should be because of the commitment level across the board. But I could also say that expectation level, on one hand, it makes it, hey, it's a hard job. No one's ever truly won there at this type of level that they're expecting. And there's got to be reasons why. So that to me would knock that, well, maybe it's not quite that job. But then you talk to other people, and I talk to people that have been through here that have coached at real places, Georgia, Alabama, USC, Texas, OU, that say they think this is the best job in the country. I don't know if I'd say it is, but what they're talking about is money, facilities, conference affiliation, location, proximity to all this talent, and the other part they talk about is the head coach. You get anything you asked for, and I think that'll change to some degree now. It's not Jimbo because they kind of had to promise him that to get him from Florida State. I don't think those type promises, like open-ended, you will get whatever. But the reality is the coach here does typically get what they want. And if Ross and those guys are going to think they're going to go changing that, I think that's also a colossal mistake. And I know everybody across the department would be like, yay, my big, mean football no longer get. If you try to pull away from football and that might make coaches in other sports happy. I think that would be a disastrous mistake for Texas A&M athletics long term. But what I do agree with, and that I don't think that's what anyone's trying to do, is I do agree with like, hey, you're the head coach. Football is king at Texas A&M. It's going to remain king at Texas A&M. But we're giving you everything you need to win. But every once in a while, you'll get told no because there is in fact a budget. There is in fact a finite limit. But compared to other schools, this is how that conversation to me needs to go. Compared to other schools that we're asking you to beat and around the country, you're going to have as much, if not more, at your disposal. That much I can assure you. If that's the conversation, then I agree with it on both sides, and I love it. So, coach comes in, they're going to get everything they need to win. And then what a lot of people, not a lot, but a couple people that I talked to have pointed out to me that have been at schools that have won a lot more than A&M. They say, I still think A&M's the best job because, people are pointing out like, hey, Georgia and Alabama have gone through long stretches of not being that good, and then Georgia got ricked and they went here and then they plateaued and then obviously they've gotten Kirby and it's to the moon. But the point of what they were saying is, at A&M, if you ever do win anything, they're not only building a statue of you, but like you're talking about go win a couple of SEC West titles and one SEC championship. Go to a 12-team playoff and advance to a Final Four once. And that's not the goal, but their point is if you did that, you're a legend. And a lot of these high-profile big-time coaches would look at this job and think, I know that's not what I'm going there to do. I'm going there to do more. I'm going there to win multiple national titles because that's what these people, every coach will be like, that's what they're giving me to work with. I can go there and do that. So it is an incredibly attractive job. People from throughout college and the NFL have reached out. Some of them are bigger names, I think, than these guys were expecting. It's like, oh, so then you have to vet and see, is this legitimate interest, or is it just someone
trying to get a raise?
A, looking for a raise, or B, and wanting their name connected with it, or B, kicking the tires and saying, I don't want to get in trouble with my current employer here, but if this team really wants me and I'm a real candidate, then by God, I'm going to be a real candidate. So the interest level's there. We'll talk more names this week, but I think Elko's absolutely going to hang in it, till the end. I think Leipold is a guy that at Kansas that they've looked at consistent. And in my opinion, he started the process as a guy that they were particularly interested in. That means nothing. That means nothing in terms of who they're going to hire. But they've got, and they've obviously interviewed Traylor. That's one of the names that got out that they interviewed. But they've talked to plenty of people. I do keep an eye out west. I look at guys like Jonathan Smith at Oregon State.
He intrigues me.
I look at he does, and I think you got to look at people who fits like the Ross profile, and he fits that.
Mm-hmm.
Jed Fish, I talked about him last week. And you look what he did to Utah. I mean, they beat the brakes off of Utah. They 28-0 to start the game. Arizona, you know what that program was like when Sumlin got there after Richard. You know what it was like when Sumlin left. For him to go in there and win, he's pretty young guy, I think, and
early 40s, I think.
I think like 47. Yeah, we'll call that early 40s.
Sure, why not?
You know what? I'm early 40s, but I wish more people believe that. But Jed, like, I've talked to people around the Pac-12 and wrote that they said Arizona's the hardest team to prepare for. The way they play, their physical, the style, those type things I hear and I listen to. I've had people around the country. Staples was one of the guys that put him on. It wasn't his early list of who A&M's pursuing. It was his early list of guys he could see A&M pursuing, and he had him on there for a reason. So he's an intriguing one. I'm just paying attention out west. I'm looking at somebody like a Matt Rule who's been at Nebraska for 1 year. So you just kind of don't assume that you can get him. What if he says, man, when I was in Texas, what I did at Baylor, what I could do, what could I do at Texas A&M? And I always thought that while I was at Baylor. And I mean, I know he's only been there a year, but if you're a head football coach, where do you think in 2023 you've got a chance to go and collect national championship trophies and build a team into a national powerhouse? What would you think? So he again is another guy that you look at his resume and you look at the ties to the state, and oh, by the way, he's the guy that gave Elijah Robinson his start. Interesting name for me. And then there's the big names, and I know. Look, I'll be honest with y'all. I've been getting names, and if a hire like this is going to happen, it's not like a hand-picked Scott loves Jimbo. Scott is married to Jimbo. Scott and Jimbo go way back. If he's going to hire anyone that's big, we know who it is. And by the way, I know it took a while for that to get out, but that Woodward had his eyes on Jimbo and had been laying the groundwork for that for months prior and wasn't that shy about saying it if you were actually listening. There's not that this year. So if it comes from one of these big names, it's going to be completely stealth. It's going to happen to emerge in just a couple of days leading up to it. And it's going to shock college football. If I'm not sitting here.
That's what's going to happen.
They're going to shock. It's not one of those.
If they were to do that, it's going to have that effect.
Yeah, but so you got to look at coaches who might not be happy with where they're at, might be frustrated with where they're at. Someone told me the other day at Dabo, Mac Brown, I don't know if this is true or not, but if it's not true and it's just coaching circle, gossip, it still makes sense because you could understand why. That Mac Brown, someone said that Mac told Dabo, I don't know if this is true, but that if he had it to do over again, he would have left Texas sooner. Just because at some point, the work is done and they don't appreciate you like they used to.
Yeah.
And you're still young enough to get a fresh start and, do it all over again. I mean, I don't know if that's true because, again, that's third-hand info, so I'm not quoting anybody, but it does make sense. So if it was made up, you could see why it was made up because it makes sense. But so, he's feeling on some level that type of way right now at Clemson. You know that if Ryan Day loses to Michigan this weekend, he's got to be sitting there going, look at my damn resume. Look at what I've done since I've become a head freaking coach here. And you guys, all you want to do is rail me about losing to Michigan lately. And then look at USC and Lincoln, although
the luster there.
You wonder, but maybe that's the whole I want out. But, and if you're A&M, you'd have to listen. You'd have to say, what does that look like? You'd have to say, why the season you just had. But that's one of those names as well. I mean, there's just a few of them out there. And then I think, Caleb DeBoer is still absolutely a target. And they are rolling towards the playoffs, if not more, although I can't wait to see them. And
well, because Michigan or Ohio State's going to lose. So that's going to open up that first spot.
Yeah. So
as long as they keep winning.
Yeah. So it's the whole thing is, it's, again, of the names I've said, don't be sitting, you can write them down or whatever, but the point I'm making is they could go really big on this thing, or they could go with more of an up-and-comer, more of like they did. Again, I go back to Florida State hiring Norvell or Florida hiring Napier, and the reason I make those points is, Memphis, ULL, both doing good things, both going to the Sunshine State, one of them trending way up, the other one maybe too early to tell, not a lot of momentum yet, but those two, that type of hire,
right.
or they go big, so it's going to be fascinating to see. You look at Florida in their last two, they went Mullen and then Napier. Those are two wild extremes. And I think A&M's living kind of in that same world that Florida's been in their last couple of coaching searches. This is the first time they've done a real search for the football coach that I can remember. Like a real, there's not a clear-cut favorite. I'm not saying they never looked at anybody else.
But they wanted someone.
They wanted someone that was obvious fit. I'm going to say they weren't, Mike Sherman kind of popped up. No, there was really no search. It was like Franz fired, and then during the A&M Texas game, it started to come out that the name was Mike Sherman. So that was in no way some colossal, coast to coast search. And then obviously they promoted RC. I mean, is that the first real search since Jackie? And you guys that are older would know, did they target Jackie and Bo Schembechler, and that was it? Y'all would remember that. I don't. But just to say, like you've seen in other sports here, we're going on a national search to try to find the best head coaching candidate. We've seen it happen in football as far as OC-DCs go. We haven't seen it in football for a head coach. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of pressure on Ross and the decision makers to get this right. My God, you talk about pressure to get it right. You're hiring the head football coach at A&M, and there's nothing that's just right there in your lap that's this lay down home run. That's when it's easy. This is not. This is hard. So they're putting in the work. They've interviewed a ton of guys. Now, some of these guys we mentioned that if they go after, I'm gonna tell you, Nuño, these ain't fly out there and sit down and interview them guys, and they're damn sure not Zoom call guys, because some of them are gonna say, "No, my client," or "I'm not doing a Zoom call right now. Like, if you guys want me, let's talk." And the question is, would A&M? I would hope they wouldn't just go, "Well, no, in that case, we'll just look for something." No, if you want one of these big guys,
you go fly and talk.
You play it on their terms. You don't have to be held hostage with the contract. That's one thing A&M's, I think, from what I've talked to, they are absolutely not going to be held hostage by a contract. They have no intention of giving a head coach every ounce of the power, every ounce of where the contract favors them. It's not going to be that way, which is why I think closing on one of these biggest of the bigs will be a little bit harder. So we shall see.
All right. That's going to do it for the Luchador Podcast, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. We'll have a lot more tomorrow on TexAgs Radio, Monday morning, 8 a.m. to 11. See you then.